What is up, guys? Today I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about how I landed my internship, my dream internship with Microsoft for next summer. This is going to be the first video in a little mini-series I'm doing where I talk about some of the things that I've done and how I got into the position to give myself these opportunities. If you're interested, make sure to subscribe so you get to see the rest of those. Without further ado, let's get started. To properly tell the story, we're going to have to go all the way back to April of 2019. So this was at the end of my sophomore year, and I hadn't even started my internship for that summer yet, and I was already thinking about my next internship. Even though I knew that this internship was over a year away, I knew that recruiting season starts in July, and I needed to start prepping ASAP. And this whole thing really started with a note that read, "How we're making it." And for me, this was really just a culmination of different ideas, different things that I wanted to make sure that I did and incorporated into my routine that I felt were essential to getting me to achieve my goals. And in this note, there were a couple different things that I decided that I really wanted to focus on for that summer that were going to make me a prime candidate when the recruiting season came for the next summer. The main couple of things on that list were cracking the coding interview, which I'm sure you've heard of, and if you haven't, you should look it up. It's a great resource. The second thing was I wanted to make sure I was very comfortable with C++. I decided I wanted to do my interviews given the choice in C++, and I wanted to be coding in it, and I wanted to be studying it frequently. And the last thing I had on there that I really wanted to do was I wanted to reread my entire data structures and algorithms textbook. I had taken the class in the fall of 2018, and I wanted to make sure that I was super sharp so that when the opportunity came, I knew my data structures and algorithms inside out. And as simple as it was, I really feel that this plan was hugely important in me being successful at the beginning of this journey. And this was so important because it was very easy to fall into a rut of getting back from my internship, being tired, and not doing anything for the rest of the night. And what I ended up forcing myself to do was coming back from my internship after a day's work and spending the next 3-4 hours just doing programming and reading books to set myself up for the next summer. That's not to say that I was perfect throughout the summer. There were definitely days that I came back from my internship and all I wanted to do was just kind of chill, but over the course of the summer, I was able to reread my entire data structures and algorithms textbook, make huge progress in C++, and was able to code proficiently in the language, and I made good progress in cracking the coding interview, which I would then continue to review as the school year started. So the next stage in this process started in July of 2019, and this is when I started applying for my internships for the next summer. So this is a full 10 months ahead of when I'm actually going to start my internship. It was at this time that I made my first application to Microsoft. So I had applied to Microsoft the year before, and I had applied as a freshman, and I never really got anywhere in the process. However, little did I know this was going to be the year that everything was going to change for me, and on August 5th, I got an email from a recruiter from Microsoft saying that they wanted to conduct a phone interview with me. There wasn't a ton of turnaround. I only had about a week to prepare, and I happened to be going on vacation that week, so I decided that I was going to do my phone call on vacation in Disney World. Unfortunately, this turned into me studying the entire vacation, trying to prepare like crazy for this interview. Fortunately, I had spent the entire summer reading my books and preparing in other ways, so it was really just brushing up on some little things as opposed to trying to cram all of my studying into 1 week. That day, I was so stressed out, I could not focus on anything other than the interview. I spent a lot of time trying to prepare that day, was not at all focused on my vacation, and eventually, 6:30 rolled around. The interview itself didn't end up being too bad. The fact that my interview was actually a Georgia Tech alum definitely helped calm me a little bit. It was only a half hour, and we just did a little bit of coding over a shared screen. Afterwards, I was definitely glad to have it over with so I could enjoy the last few days of my vacation. However, that started phase 3 of this process, which was waiting. So phase 3 is waiting, but in 2 different respects. The first part was just waiting to find out how I did on my phone interview. I had no idea if I was going to move forward or if that was going to be the end of the road for me. I finally got some news on August 26th, which was about 2 weeks after my original interview, and it turned out that I had done well on my interview and they wanted me to move forward. The bad news was they were currently booked up and they were going to have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to let me know if I was even going to be able to come on site. I was still pretty happy about this news though. I hadn't heard anything, and the fact that they were happy with how I had done and that they wanted to bring me on site was really good news. There was another good thing about this, which is it gave me a lot of time to prepare. Like I mentioned before, I had spent the entire summer preparing, but I still felt like I wasn't really ready for a full on-site interview with Microsoft. Finally, after almost exactly a month of waiting, I got an update. On September 25th, I found out that I had been selected for on-site interviews. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my room talking to my friend. I happened to check my email, as I do a lot of times a day, and I saw that I had gotten onto the final round of interviews. Obviously, I was extremely excited, and it turned out that I'd be flying out the very next week. They did give me additional dates, but just because of my fall break and other things that were going on, I decided that it made the most sense to fly out as soon as possible. Finally, after waiting 6 weeks since my original interview, I knew I had made it to the final round in Seattle. What came next was a crazy week of preparation of not only preparing for the interview, but also taking tests and making sure I got all of my work done before I left campus for a couple days. I have to say, that was probably one of the fastest weeks I had of that entire semester, because before I knew it, I was going to be flying out, and I did not feel ready yet. I should also mention, Microsoft was amazing during this process. They paid for my flights, my hotel, my food, getting to and from the airport. They took care of all the details, so all I had to do was worry about showing up and doing well. Next thing I knew, it was October 2nd, and I was flying out to Seattle. It's about a 5-hour flight from Atlanta to Seattle. I've actually never flown across the country other than for that trip, and I was able to make the most of that time studying a lot on the plane while also getting to see some really cool mountains. After I arrived and got my bags, I was driven from the airport to my hotel, which was one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed in my life. Thank you, Microsoft. But that night I was a nervous wreck. I was sitting there studying and studying and studying, and I couldn't think about anything else about what an amazing opportunity this was and how badly I wanted to work for Microsoft. I also had adjusted the different time though. When I went to bed there, it was about 9 o'clock, which was midnight from where I come from. As I've mentioned in other videos, I typically go to bed around 11 o'clock, so this felt a little bit weird. That night I could hardly sleep because I knew the next day was October 3rd, and October 3rd was the day that everything was going to change. The next morning, I got up at 5:30 in the morning, made sure I did some studying, did a little bit of coding by hand, got all dressed up in my suit, and I headed to Microsoft around 9 o'clock, which was an hour before my interview was due to start. I was one of the first ones there from my group. There were already some people there interviewing for different teams, but I was assigned to the purple group. They gave us all name tags when we came in. As you can see, I kept mine. That was one of my souvenirs, and I got to sit around and study for a little bit, and I also got to socialize with some of the other people who were going for the positions. This also happened to be my very first time doing an in-person interview. I should explain. My first 2 internships I happened to get while I was in Atlanta, and as a result, I had done only video or phone interviews for both of those positions. I was all decked out with a full suit on, but it turned out that most other people were not going for full suits. In fact, it was definitely a very casual vibe. It was not what I expected. Microsoft had said that we could wear whatever we wanted to the interview, but ultimately I decided that it was better to overdress than be underdressed. At 10 o'clock, I got called into my first interview of 2. They were both 45 minutes long, and I have to say they were both very intense. I can't talk too much about the contents of the interviews, but I can say that both the people that I interacted with were super nice, but also incredibly intelligent. The interviews were mostly technical and at the whiteboard, but I also got to have some dialogue with both of my interviewers about what it's like to work at Microsoft. There was a 15-minute break between the 2 interviews that gave you a chance to grab a snack, because Microsoft provided snacks, go to the bathroom, and just kind of collect yourself for interview number 2. After the second interview, they collected all of us and gave us a free swag. More specifically, after that, they took us through their campus, which, if you're not familiar with it, is huge. We went to their food court area, which has a ton of different options, and of course, Microsoft subsidized. After lunch, we were free to walk around the campus if we wanted to. I had a lot of work to get done, so I headed straight back to my room, and for the rest of the night, I just got some schoolwork done. That night, I was just as anxious as I was the night before, and all I could do was think about whether I had done enough to get myself an offer from Microsoft. The next afternoon, I flew back to Atlanta, and that takes us to the final part of this process, which was waiting for my decision. And I didn't have to wait long. The next Monday, I was in a meeting, and I got a call coming from somewhere in Washington. Naturally, I freaked out, and I ran to the stairwell, and I answered the phone. Anticlimactically, I could not hear anything coming through the phone line, and I sat there for a minute in silence until they hung up the phone. At this point, I was freaking out because I knew a call from Washington could only mean one thing, which was that my decision was ready. Fortunately, I wasn't held in suspense for too long because I got an email about 10 minutes later telling me that I had gotten the offer. Naturally, I was ecstatic. I couldn't wait to tell my friends, my parents, and I was just so excited that I was going to be able to work for Microsoft next summer. The very next day, I signed my offer letter, and that takes us to present, where I've been waiting for details from Microsoft before I start my internship. So far, I know I'll be working on the Visual Studio team, but there's a lot more things that have to be cleared up, and I can't wait to start getting more emails from Microsoft in the coming weeks. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that thumbs up button. I really appreciate it. If you're new here and you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. Alright guys, that's been it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.